What's up, everybody? Welcome to Cinema Trip Reviews. I am Wyatt, and once again this week joined by Alex. How you doing, Alex?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Doing great. We are talking about Sinister from 2012. Before we get into everything, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Cinema Trip Reviews. Also, drop in, leave us a good review wherever you get your podcasts. Help us get the word out there, get the channel out there. So, today we are talking about Sinister from 2012. I actually remember going to see this in theaters. What's your kind of experience with the movie here, Alex?
Same. I saw it in theaters close to when it came out. We were kind of talking. I don't know if it was with you or somebody else, but I definitely saw this in theaters when it first came out. So
Is this not one that you kind of watch like frequently?
I'm not. We've talked about this before. I'm not really like a ghost story person. Like this isn't my type of horror. Now, what I will say, and just right off the bat, it scared me in the theaters, and it kind of scared me when I watched it this time too.
It seems to have that effect on people. Actually, I think it was a couple years ago. I think it was like 2020 or 2021. Forbes had the list of like the scariest horror movies of all time, and Sinister was number one. The
Really?
reason that it was number one was because I guess they put a lot of like heart rate monitors, so it
Oh
measures like
yeah,
the beat per minute, and apparently Sinister was like the top one. Like
this
that
was
spiked.
scary.
I think it was like 113 beats per minute. It spiked that, and that was the highest out of any other horror movie that they had a lot of these people watching. And
It's
these are like horror fans they kind of judged it
yeah,
from. So it's not like
just
some random person out there.
kind of side tangent. I watched this movie with my wife, and like there were scenes I'm literally watching it like, oh shit, Wife stone cold through the whole thing. She was fine, and then
Not impressed.
right afterwards, we put on Wrong Turn, which I think's fine, and she's like that. She was like, I can't take it. And I'm like, for this, like Sinister, you were fine with, but the Wrong Turn. So it was kind of funny.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned this because Sinister, I purposely don't watch this very often, and it's not because it's like super scary or anything, but I think it's so it kind of preserves the movie in a way to me because, like you mentioned, in theaters, it definitely has that certain spooky atmosphere. Like, there's nothing like really super like scary about it. Like, the scariness is like just the creepiness of the atmosphere and how dark the movie gets at times. And I think it's just not one of those movies I really go back to very often, just because I like to kind of preserve that feeling
Yeah,
within it. I've only seen it a handful of times since it came out in 2012, and I got the same feeling last night. And it has a lot to do with that, Super 8 like home movie aspect of it, and also the music that's used throughout those scenes of the home movies is so damn creepy. And it's just so eerie, and it just gives you kind of goosebumps while you're watching. It feels like you're actually watching like a snuff film of some
yeah.
sort. It's like a real life snuff film.
And they like, I'm gonna be honest with you. One of my critiques of the movie is like it's a lot of jump scares, like cheap jump scares too, like
Yeah,
just pops. But like it's effective. Like they're effective, kind of earned jump scares because it's a tension you build. You follow this guy through his house a lot. Like there's just a lot of scenes of Ethan Hawke, right?
yeah,
No,
Ethan
no, no.
Hawke.
Yeah, Ethan Hawke. Yeah, of him just walking through the house, and then it happens, and you know it's coming because the music like shuts off and everything. But like, it is a lot of
Yeah.
jump scares, but it's worth
Yeah,
it.
that's kind of my only, like, not even like a complaint, but kind of a nitpick
Yeah,
is I think the parts outside of the home movies, like where it's supposed to be scary, where he's walking around the house and you have those jump scares, I think that's kind of the least effective part of the movie. I think the most effective is the actual home movies themselves. Even though you see a couple of them numerous times, I think they're even more effective because he's kind of finding
they
other
layer
things
them.
within these things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they start layering.
exactly. Yeah, so I think outside of the actual home movies, it kind of, I wouldn't say it takes like a nosedive, but kind of goes down as far as the scariness level. It has a couple decent ones in there, but there's a lot of like cheap ones that are
The Boy in the
introduced in there
Box,
as well.
yeah. The Boy in the Box, pretty good. Like his son in the box is a good one. And
Yeah,
the
it's
one that
okay.
gets me, and I know it's like the most cheap one, but it's the one where he's in the attic and the face and like Bagul's face comes out. Like
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's like, and I know that's the cheapest jump scare of them all, but like
Yeah, the
that's the
one that
one that
normally
gets me. I'm
like
like, oh,
I know it's coming, but it's kind of like it kind of waits just a little bit longer than you're kind of expecting for it to happen. Like, something's coming, and then it waits like an extra second or two. It's like whenever he's walking through the house at one point, and that the one girl's face just kind of comes out beside him. Like she like
yeah,
leans down beside him, and then like you have the kids kind of running throughout
like
the
running
house.
through the house. Yeah,
Yeah, that kind of gets me just because it's just like a little off. Normally I'm decent at kind of timing these things like when they're gonna happen, and it's just like a
yeah.
second or two off when you're expecting it, and it works.
And that's just like you said, that's just the film that isn't within the film because then those are some of those are scary too. Like the
Yeah.
lawnmower, that gets me every time.
That's the
Like
best
the
one. I think that's
yeah,
some like the best part of the whole movie, and I
like
remember in theaters that getting me. Like I
yeah,
was like you're just waiting for it. It's like another like what I was just saying, it you're not expecting the timing. It's off. It's
yeah.
weird
It
because you're
comes
just
out of
having
nowhere.
that lawnmower, it's running on like the pavement for a while and then hits the grass and you're just waiting. You're waiting for something to happen.
And
And then
all
of
of the
course it
other
does.
films up into that, like, because he watches a bunch in the movie, like they're not
Mhm.
like that. You know, it's not like gruesome like that. You know, it's like kind of a slow build where that one's
Yeah.
just like comes at you.
Exactly. And I mean, the home movies that I guess they were actually shot on 8 millimeter film. That's why you have that graininess to them and everything. And I think it definitely helps the movie in a way. But to know that they actually went back and took the time to use actual old school film to do that, it's awesome. Because I love the aesthetic of just film, like actually using film. And I wish
Yeah,
a lot more studios actually did that with their movies. There's some here and there, but you know how it's way easier to shoot on digital. You don't have to have it's I guess it's more expensive just to use film now than it was,
yeah,
how many years ago. But there's just something about the quality and just the grittiness of old school filmmaking I really like, and just to have that kind of presence still today. And I mean, even a little over 10 years ago now, I just love when films actually do that, to kind of take the time to give it that kind of authenticity
yeah. No, I
instead of just
agree.
slapping a filter on it and be like, yeah, it's old school.
Yeah, it doesn't
like
work.
and
You could tell when it's a filter. You know, it's too like planned when it's a filter. You know, like the grain's too good. Like I know that sounds weird, but it's like it's too good a
I know what
grain.
you mean, but the movie is directed by Scott Derrickson. Before this, he ended up directing Hellraiser Inferno. It's like I think it's the fourth or fifth one. I haven't seen it. Because I've only seen like the first two Hellraisers. I actually need to go back through them and
Yeah,
and watch all of
great
them.
chance for you now.
Yeah, I got the new box set
Yeah,
that came out for it. He directed The Exorcism of Emily Rose. I
yeah.
only saw
I,
that one once.
I
It
think
it
I've
was
seen it once.
okay, but
I don't
it
super
also
remember.
kind of relies on some of those cheap jump scares from what I remember. I mean, it's been a long ass time since I've seen it, so I could be wrong in that aspect. It wasn't too memorable for me in any way. And then he actually went and made a big payday. He got that Marvel money, and he ended up directing Doctor Strange, the first Doctor Strange,
Hmm.
which is pretty interesting.
That's strange because literally just last review we were doing it had a big Marvel connection that came around, you know, because we were doing
Yeah,
James Gunn and stuff, yeah,
exactly, James Gunn
and Zack
and
Snyder, yeah.
everything. Yeah,
Huh.
so I mean, he's dabbled in horror, and also I think after Doctor Strange, he did like the Snowpiercer TV series. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Snowpiercer with
I
Chris
know what it
Evans in
is.
it.
I know what it
It's
is.
pretty
Yeah,
decent.
yeah. On the train, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's on a list somewhere of me movies I should watch.
But this movie does have Ethan Hawke in it. He plays Ellison. He is a true crime writer that is moving into a new house to work on his next book that involves a
Gruesome
family
murder.
that was killed and also a child that went missing. And not only does he decide to move into the town, which is in Pennsylvania, our home state and everything. I have no clue where it's supposed to be at in Pennsylvania, but
Yeah, I
um,
didn't even know it was in PA. I'm glad you
yep,
picked
it's
it
set
up.
in Pennsylvania. But he moves into the actual house the murders took place in, and I mean, I guess he's had a complicated past. It's insinuated that there was a huge media circus at one time. His own theories, like attributed to like somebody going free, like a killer going free,
Yeah, they
and
got
that
the wrong
caused
guy.
yeah, they got the wrong guy, and it caused a lot of information, caused a lot of bad stuff happening. You don't really dive into that; it's just kind of mentioned during one of the conversations, and then you like he goes and watches like one of his old interviews at one point, and he's just kind of cringing at some of the stuff he's actually
Yeah.
saying in these old interviews. But you don't really take a huge dive into his past. Everything's kind of settled within the present and this huge story that's kind of unfolding that he's trying to unravel as the movie goes on.
Well, he is a dick. He doesn't tell his wife, by the way, that this is the house of these killers. Like,
Yeah,
that's a dick move, man.
yeah.
That's just a
I
dick
mean, the
move.
wife would have shut that down immediately, which is
Well,
understandable. But
and
he's
you know
like,
what?
hey, I mean, it's a cheap house.
Yeah, just grisly murders happened here. Just
The price was
listen.
reduced. How
I'm in the homeowner
crazy not to
buying.
take the deal.
I would not take it if like a grisly murder just happened in that house. I'd be like, nah, I'm
It's like
cool.
what he says, like, "It didn't happen in the house, it happened in the backyard." He's, "Oh, that's so much better." But I don't know, I just like these types of movies where, like, it's a something involving a writer, and he's, like, working on their next piece, whether, like, they're in the town, unraveling a mystery or something. Notably, one of my favorite ones is Secret Window with
I
Johnny
was gonna
Depp
say
in it.
Secret Window. I
It's
was thinking
it's
that.
It's always been one of my favorite movies. I know a lot of people kinda look down on it as, like, it's not that great of a movie, but there's just
Yeah.
something so kinda comforting, and it's just kind of like a nice watch, like a Sunday watch for me. Like, I don't know, there's just something about that movie, and just there's other movies as well that involve writers that are super interesting, even video games with, like, Alan Wake and
Alan Wake,
everything.
yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know, it's just something like you have that mystery, but you also have the writer that's kind of going through writer's block or something else in their past that they're kind of struggling through as well. It's just I don't know, it's you even have him in like the generic like writer like cardigan with like the leather elbow pads that he wears the whole damn movie. You can't be
Again,
a
we
writer unless you have like one of those cardigans.
we just watched Salem Lot, which was the same plot. Was a writer moving back in.
I was just about to say that. Yeah,
It
exactly.
was just
Salem's Lot is very
recycling.
similar
Yeah.
to start off in a way. Just instead of the vampires running a town, you have a boogeyman demon that lives in media that
Well,
possesses people.
this one definitely banks a lot more on that he is a writer. Like the plot is moved along because he's a writer. Like Salem's Lot,
Yeah.
like it's kind of like a throwaway. Like, oh, that's why he's here, and then it has
Yeah, that just gives them the
nothing
reason
to
to be
do.
there.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the rest of the story. This guy makes dumb decisions in this movie, but like you get it. He's researching, doing
Yeah,
things like
and
that.
he doesn't really do any actual writing or anything in the movie. It's more just his investigation into what's going on and trying to connect and piece together all these like individual like movies and how they're connected in one way or another. You don't even really have too many characters in the movie at all. I mean, you have Ethan Hawke who plays Ellison, Juliet Rylance who plays Tracy, his wife. You have James Ranson who plays Deputy So and So. They don't even give this dude a name, I don't think.
So and so.
And then you also have you have Fred Dalton Thompson who plays Sheriff, and he doesn't even have a name in the credits. I saw he's just Sheriff.
Vincent D'Onofrio, love him. He's the
Oh yeah,
professor.
D'Onofrio
Yeah.
as the professor, and I feel
Yeah.
like this is one of the I wouldn't say it's the first movie, but this is the one that kind of got memed through because you have so many horror movies after Sinister that are like, there's this presence that's in the house, there's this monster or whatever. We got to call this professor so he can
Call
just
the
give
professor.
a whole rundown on who this thing is, and
Give me
like
the expedition dump. Like,
that's
come
where
on.
it kind of starts from, you know. Like, oh, I'll get you in contact with this professor who studies in this ordeal, and he's going to give you the whole plot, the whole backstory on this like force that's troubling the main character throughout this movie. And I feel like Sinister, that's the one where it's kind of memed about. This is the one where it's kind of ripped from that. I'm sure it's happened previously
Yeah.
throughout movies and such, but Sinister, that's really the one that goes out of its way to be like, this is the only reason this guy is here. You don't really see him other than just Ethan Hawke calling him and getting, the explanation behind Bagul, who
I
is
think
the
he's
entity.
credited. Like, I don't think he's in the credits because I was looking for him. I don't even think he's in the credits. That's how like little he has to do.
Jeez. I mean, he wasn't because this is 2012. When did Daredevil come out? Like the series,
Years after this, not till like probably 2015, 26. I would
2015
guess.
or something.
I would
2015.
guess.
Yeah, you were
Yeah.
right on the money, dude. Damn.
Oh my.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like at that time Vincent D'Onofrio wasn't a huge deal. Like I believe he was
We
in
knew it
the
was.
Law and Order TV shows,
Yeah,
wasn't
like
he?
yeah.
But I mean, he was in Full Metal Jacket all those years ago. Men in Black,
Yeah, he's in
Daredevil.
things.
Yeah, he's
And
in
he
things.
is
I
in
just
Men in
don't think he
Black.
was as big as he is now, like recognizable.
Man, Men in Black, he's the bad guy.
Yeah, he's the roach
Man.
dude.
Weird to even that don't even look like Vincent But you're right. I mean, I knew that, but
It's
like
crazy, right?
that's
I
just
mean,
weird to
even
think
going
about.
back to Full Metal Jacket, it doesn't really look like him. Like him
Yeah.
younger, and he's like way like heavier in it and
He's a
everything.
hefty boy, yeah.
But he's decent in this movie though. I mean, he's only in it for
He's an
mainly
expedition
five,
dump.
if anything, 5 minutes in the movie. He doesn't have a
Yeah.
lot of screen time. But Ethan Hawke, this is actually pretty cool. Whenever he had to film the scenes of him watching the home movies, he watched them for the first time as they were filming, and they also had the music added to it as well. So his genuine reaction was to the movies and to the music itself, so he can have that like general like disgust
Reaction.
to himself, like watching these things. The idea of the family hanging from the tree came to I think it was one of the writers of the movie. It came to him in a dream after he watched The Ring, apparently, and he's like, "That's kind of a cool idea. I need to insert this into a movie somehow." And they based like the whole home movie aspect of it around the like Faces of Death. I don't know if you've heard of the old
I
movie
don't,
Faces of
yeah.
Death. It was like supposedly it was like real killings that happened, and then it kind of got debunked later at a
Yeah.
later point. this movie was given a rated R rating, and they weren't really sure why, because it was just given rated R due to disturbing images and terror. Because there's barely any blood in this movie, there's barely any swearing. So I guess one of the producers was going around saying our movie literally got a rated R for just being too scary.
I mean, there's not really blood until the end, like to the very,
No,
very end.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean the only other point you really see blood is during the one movie where the one kid is slitting the
Them.
family's
Yeah.
throats, but you could barely see it because it's such a cool way how they shot it, where he's watching it and you see it off the reflection of his glasses,
Yeah.
and I just like that was a really cool idea and like a really cool shot they implemented into there.
I gotta ask a question about, and you're probably not the expert on it, but like in the one where they get hung by the tree, there's like a saw moving by itself, right? Like up in the corner. Like I was like, is there a saw moving that's like cutting the tree?
I never noticed it. Maybe I'd like
Like
to be honest.
because I
I'd have
know
to go back and watch it because I'm assuming it's the
later
girl, right? It's the because they show
later it
her
shows that.
after
Yeah.
the yeah.
Like you realize that later, but like for like until that like revelation happens, it's literally just a saw like moving up and down, cutting this branch. And
It's
I'm
like
like,
what the hell is going
how is
on
that
here?
not the weirdest thing in this? Like people are like, what is that saw doing?
I mean, it would make sense because you have the revelation it's actually the children. Spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't
Spoiler.
seen Sinister
Yeah.
in all this time, like 12 years or so. Uh, but yeah, it's actually the kids. So my guess is maybe Bagul removed the kids from the actual footage, and that's why
Yeah,
you
because
have like the extended cuts
it
at the
comes
end.
later. Yeah. Like, and I know we're kind of rushing through the story. There's not a lot happens in this movie. It's like
That's why I was gonna like say
we
this
could
is
sum
gonna
it up
be
in
like a
50
little
minutes.
different from our average review because
Yeah.
there's not a whole lot that happens, like huge stuff that happens throughout the
Yeah.
movie.
He watches
There's
films. It keeps getting more and more disturbing. Bagul
Yeah,
keeps
they're
putting
a
stuff in
lot of
his
the same
house.
films that you're
Yeah.
watching throughout the whole movie, and you're only finding things out like piece by piece. Bagul is translates to Boogeyman. They call him Mr. Boogie in the pictures that the kids draw
Yeah.
in it and
It's written on
everything.
it.
Yeah, and I think it's a really cool, interesting story. And I've never seen the sequel. I know there's a Sinister 2, and the only reason I
Agreed.
didn't see it is because how terrible I heard it was.
I like a
Like the
good bad
director didn't
movie
even
though.
come back to direct it. He produced it from what I understand, but it's definitely not as scary or atmospheric or as dark as this one, from what I hear.
I like a bad movie though, Wyatt. You know me. I'm a sucker for a bad movie.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the movie though, because I feel like when you have a bad like modern horror movie, like Sinister 2 or one of these other things, like another typical Blumhouse movie. This was produced by Blumhouse, but a lot of modern Blumhouse movies are very mediocre. So it's like I feel like when you have a bad one of those, it just kind of lands as boring and not really
Yeah.
entertaining. Whereas like an 80s or a 90s bad movie, you can still find some entertainment in it. Like it may be funny because it's not taking itself as seriously or
See,
something
that's the
like
thing.
that.
Like, if it's just like a dull movie, a boring, I don't want to watch it. Like, then I'm out.
Mhm.
Which is where I think Blumhouse mostly. If it's like a bad film, that's where it starts like kind of fascinating me. Like we've talked about it before. Like I love watching like any creature feature, Pumpkinhead, Jason, whatever it may
Yeah.
be, and just seeing the like slow downturn of like who made this decision. Who's sitting there and was like, yeah, I know we're coming off the success of Sinister. Let's make all these bad decisions.
Yeah, and I mean, this was coming out at a time when a lot of big stuff was coming out. Not the year per se, but you had Sinister in 2012, you had The Conjuring in 2013, you had what was it,
Paranormal Activities right
Insidious.
around
Paranormal Activities was
Insidious.
like a couple years before, but they were like second and two,
Still
three
pumping
were
them.
coming out around that time. Insidious was like a couple years previous. You had a lot of these like bigger name kind of not
Ghost.
psychological, but yeah, like ghost movies coming out around that time. Because like the early 2000s and mid 2000s was like the zombie revolution, like we talked about in our Dawn of the Dead review, and then you really hit the ghosts and the paranormal stuff in the late
Yeah.
2000s, like early 2010s era.
You could
It's
not
so
get
funny
away.
how you have like these little eras of what's big within
But
horror at that time.
when Paranormal Activity came out, like you could not get away from that film. Everybody was watching. It was the scariest film, like
Yeah,
so
because it
this
was
is like
also it was an indie movie that it got like pumped up because of the hype around it. Like people were
eh,
saying how terrifying it was, and they were filming audience reactions and everything.
I
And
never
it got
liked it.
crowdfunded, from what I understand, to actually go to more theaters, and that
Yeah.
blew up. That's a movie we'll have to cover eventually
I
because of
never liked it.
how. Oh, you never like Paranormal
I
Activity?
mean, like I don't got like hate for it or anything. I'm not saying it's a bad movie, but like even the first time I watched it, I remember being like, okay, like there's it's got an effective ending. I'm not going to take it away
Yeah.
from that. The ending's effective. Up until that point, I think it's boring, but we're getting
I
sidetracked.
can understand that, and they're hard movies to come back to because
Yes,
you kinda know what's gonna happen, the
yeah,
surprises are kinda ruined at that point. But yeah, I mean, this is, like, right in that little pocket where ghosts and paranormal movies were huge, and it's, like, right after this, The Conjuring really blew it up into the mainstream and
the
everything.
whole like universe with the nun and the like Annabelle
Yeah,
and stuff like that's like a whole
Annabelle and
universe.
everything. Yeah,
Those
I
are
mean,
movies I
I
never
talked about
watched.
Annabelle during the Salem's Lot review because the director of that wrote a lot of the Conjuring spinoffs, and
Yeah,
he directed one of the Annabelles. I haven't really
I've
seen
never.
those at all. I haven't I
I've
think I've only seen The Nun as far as the spinoffs go.
I think I've only ever seen The Conjuring. I don't think I've seen anything past The Conjuring. Like I've just seen the
Gotcha.
first one. Again,
Yeah, the
ghost
first 2
movies not
are
really my
pretty
thing.
decent. Yeah,
Not really my
I
thing.
completely understand. I mean,
Yeah,
those are also movies that really kind of rely on cheap jump scares. I mean, some of them do have decent like the first Conjuring and the second one, they do have kinda spooky, creepy moments to them, but they do also heavily rely on jump scares as well.
yeah, get into that zone.
Yeah, and that's what I like about this one is it doesn't rely too heavy on the jump scares. It really it scares you just by making you feel very like unsettled, like uncomfortable watching these home movies. And I mean, the one was the pool party, and I like how they're like named just so like
Yeah,
they're regular home movies. Like what was it? Hanging out with the family was
was the tree
the
one?
hanging
Yeah,
one, the tree one, the pool
pool
party.
party.
The
Yeah.
pool party apparently they actually filmed practically. They actually tied the people to the chairs and pulled them into the pool, and they had a scuba diver down in the pool with oxygen masks to put on them as soon as they got dunked down in there. The same with
Uh-uh.
the dude that played Bagul. He had like weighted shoes on so he can be at the bottom of the pool, and they
That
had
was a good
someone with
shot.
like an oxygen mask for him and everything.
That's a good shot though. Like when he's down there just staring back at the camera. A
Yeah,
lot of the Bagul shots are good shots up into the end.
yeah.
Up into the end, but
Up until
yeah,
the end, the one where they slide in right at the very end, just for that
yeah,
little
yeah.
the
You gotta
extra jump
gotta go.
scare to go
Yeah,
out on. But yeah, I think they were definitely really creepy and effective. The only one that doesn't really work for me is where he like blows up the one shot of him in the window, and he's like paying attention to something else, and you see
move.
Bagul's head turn at him.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's not very creepy, or it doesn't really work for me. I think maybe if it would have happened while he was like originally watching it, like during the movie itself, his head turns, and he's like, "Oh, it's actually a person down there" or something. That would have worked a little bit better. But I can
that's
understand what
almost
they're
it's almost breaking the fourth wall in horror sense because that's not a scare for the character. You know,
yeah, it's a
that's a
scare
scare
for
for
you.
us. Like that's an us scare, which I get you. That kind of takes it out for me. You know, I'm like
And one aspect I was kind of curious about that I'm not sure if they really answered was later, like it's in the last like 10 minutes of the movie, whenever he calls Vincent D'Onofrio back and he tells him like, yeah, I ran through the history of him, and he like Bagul stands for the boogeyman, and he like lives within like media, like pictures and like films, and he can possess the viewers to doing what he wants them to do and such. And it's like and it always involves the family getting killed and the youngest child going missing. But it's like Ethan Hawke's the one that's watching these movies. Why it wasn't him that was possessed instead of his
yeah,
child? Like how was his child possessed when she wasn't watching any of it, you know? That's what I was kind of wondering. It doesn't really answer that aspect of it because it seems like it's affecting the whole house. Like it's not even just affecting
yeah.
him. So it's like how is it affecting everybody else if they're not watching the movies, you know?
And to be honest with you, I would find like old movies in my attic. I'd probably watch them too. So
Why not? Yeah, you'd want to know what was on them, like
I kind of
VHS
probably
tapes or something.
I'd dig
Yeah.
out a VCR and watch them. But like, yeah, I'm with you. Like, I don't know. I guess maybe it's just like it's how he gets released. You know, like he's like dormant until he gets released because it does show like the daughter is drawing so she can see the ghosts and stuff like that. It shows that in a few scenes. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know. I do like this story. I like I think this is unique and a twist like modern because everybody watches a ghost story where a family moves into a new house and they're like, just get the fuck out. But really, that's what like that's what does them in the end is because they just like
Eventually, he does,
yeah,
like, wisen
Ethan Hawke
up, like,
like
"You know
fuck
what?
this, we're
Fuck
out.
this story, it's not worth it.
And he just
I'm
leaves. He
leaving."
moves back home, which is what we all think in every go anime Illville horror, any house movie I've ever watched. I'm like, I would not live there. I'd get the fuck out.
And
Like
I
I'd
love how
leave.
they flip, like, the whole story on its head too with that, and it's like,
Yeah,
"Oh, yeah, you just bought into it. You just kinda fast tracked the process here by moving
exactly.
to another
You
town, like, to
shouldn't have
another
moved. Yeah,
house."
you should not have moved. You should have stayed. He'd have just kept fucking with you if you'd have stayed.
Because as you find out, all these families that die in these videotapes, each one of them has lived in the house of the previous one, but and then they move, and then something
Oh, it
happens. You
happens
know, the
again.
family gets
Yeah.
killed and the child disappears. But yeah, Ethan Hawke moving away, even though it was the smart decision, like, yeah, I'm for my mental health and my family's health, I'm gonna get the fuck out of here. Even though it takes him long enough. Like he's had so many fights with his wife throughout the whole movie where she's just telling him, like, well, first off, like even from the beginning, I wasn't on her side because I was like, you're being very like you're
Yeah.
not supportive of your man. Like, I
Yeah.
understand it's been 10 years since he's had a hit, but he's still trying to chase that hit. Like, why wouldn't you support him? He's still coming out. He's like with books. He's still working. But like even from the beginning, she wasn't like super supportive of him. She's like, maybe your 15 minutes of fame is gone.
Um,
Like maybe
well,
it's
fuck
time to
you.
go like writing fiction again. You were happier when you were writing fiction
Yeah, he
and
doesn't
stuff.
want to like be a professor or something. Like that's what like he keeps saying. He doesn't want to go to school and be a professor. So I'm like, that doesn't sound bad. I'd do that.
Yeah, and then he kind of he's starting to become something that he told himself he was never going to become, and that's why the importance of him going back and watching that old interview of his where he says like, if I'm ever doing this for the money and the glory or the fame, like shoot me. I forget what he exactly he
Yeah.
says, but I shouldn't be doing this at all.
You
Um,
yeah, if I do it for the money, like yeah, he says something like that. You touched
yeah,
on like him like it took too long. Like it took wait, like he sees some shit before he gets out of this
he
house.
sees some shit.
And
Like
one of my
even the first day that he's there, he finds the scorpion in the attic, and you're like, bro, you are in Pennsylvania. There
there's
are
not
no scorpions.
I love I love the line where he's like, I heard feet, and he's like, you heard feet, and he's like, yeah. Then I found a snake up there, and he's like, snake don't have feet.
Snakes don't have feet. Yeah, the
Snakes
deputy
don't.
so and so.
He's like, snakes don't make
And
sounds.
then he's like, I saw a scorpion the other day. He's like, yeah, scorpions have feet, but I don't think you're gonna hear them.
Yeah, I was cracking up. I was like, oh, that was a good line. That's like this entertaining dialogue.
Because even the deputy, like, he's all in. He's like that the fan because the sheriff like it shows up as soon as he arrives, and he's like,
Yeah, don't cause no
"Listen
trouble.
here, I don't want any unnecessary attention coming to my little town here, and especially I don't really think it's tasteful for you to move into the house of the people who were murdered and everything to write this story." He's like, "I've seen everything on you. I don't like your writing." He's like, "I just want you to know, if it was up to me, you'd be on, out of here
Yeah, he'd
already."
be out.
Yeah, and then you have like the deputy who's kind of a fanboy over him. Like he wants to work with them. Like he even says, like, you know how you have like those writing credits? Like, thank you so much for the support of such and such police department. It's like, I want to be that dude. I want to
Yeah,
help
that's
you
what gets
out.
so and so. He's like, deputy so and so in the book, and he's like, I'll be deputy so and so. That's how he gets the name.
And even that relationship kind of changes through the movie too, because at first Ethan Hawke's just using him. He's like, "Oh yeah, give me this information, such and such." Yep, yep, and then he just hangs up on him. And then by like halfway, a little bit over halfway through the movie, he's like confiding in him, like telling him everything that's happening, and even
He's
stuff
freaked
that's
out.
happening with himself.
He's
He's
scared at this
trusting him a little
point.
bit more.
Yeah,
And then that's when he kind of the deputy starts doubting him. He's like, "Hey man, like I saw you've been drinking a lot. You've had some whiskey bottles open. Like, I'm not
he does
going to
drink a
say
lot.
like you're imagining things, but maybe you're imagining
Maybe
things."
you're just drinking too much, which he
And
like
he's like,
starts instantly. And I think it's kind of hinted that he had an alcohol problem before, and like he lets
"Yeah,"
it get a hold of him. But
because the
like,
wife says about like you don't normally start like into the whiskey until later. Like
but he
you
starts
started right
drinking
away.
like almost instantly, almost before he sees
As soon as he
anything. Like
starts
he's
watching those
yeah, as soon as
those
he puts the
videos,
video on, he's got a thing on.
he's like,
Like
I'm gonna need some drink to get through this
I'm
shit.
like, how long did it take him in the other cases? Like he went right for it in this one.
He even did have that moment of wanting to like go to the police as soon as he started watching them, which probably would have been the smarter aspect of it. Like, hey, I found
Like,
all this evidence in my attic. You might want to take a
man,
look at
nobody
these.
checked this.
Nobody checked this at all.
Uh,
But he like calls the cops, and I'm pretty sure this is a crime too. Is if you call the cops, say there's an emergency, and then just hang up, they're gonna call you back. They're gonna see exactly what's going on. They could trace where the call came from.
yeah, like, excuse me.
But he even calls them, and then he's like to report it, and then he's like, you know what? I think this could be my next big break. This could be my next huge story. I'm going to save this for me. I'm going to be the one that unravels this whole mystery and everything. And that's really where he starts leaning into I need to get famous to make my like I need to write the next big bestseller out here so we're set for life and everything. I'm also very intrigued on how this whole Bagul thing works because if how does the box get in the attic? And how is
Who
the
puts
new
it there?
home movie? Is it the kids? I'm assuming because he burns all of them at one point. because like when he reaches his peak, whenever he's like the
Yeah.
most frightened, even after he falls through the attic and everything,
Sees
and
some kids and shit like
sees
that.
some kids, runs into the dog, the
Yeah.
Rottweiler in the yard.
Bagul jumps out.
Yeah, because that's another like little jump scare. He's holding the picture up and then pulls it down, and he's there in the
Yeah.
yard. But like he burns the box of all the films, and he even burns the actual like the projector itself. But then by the end of the movie, there's a whole new box with all those still, like films in it, and the new
That's,
one that's added in there at
mm,
the end too.
that's just a supernatural, like,
I
you
need to
know,
know, Alex, how does it
this
happen?
box
They didn't
this box is
explain it.
gonna get bigger too, man, because like the picture they draw on the end is the end because they're like drawing all the murders on the top of the box, like the lid of the
They have to get two
box.
boxes.
Yeah, like they're gonna have to get two boxes, or this box is gonna have to be bigger because she drew at the very corner of
At
it.
the
Like
bottom, yeah.
this thing was over. That's either the last murder or there needs to be a bigger box next time, Bagul. Like you got to figure this shit out. Like get another box. Watch them both.
Just because I watched this, I kind of want to go back and see the second one
I'm going
just
to
to
now.
see how you would even continue this type of
I
story.
didn't know
Like,
there was.
yeah, because I mean, you have Bagul who's only within media and such. Like, how are you going to continue? I mean, they only did a second one; they didn't do any after that, which I'm surprised because I feel like a movie that gets as big as Sinister was or is, that normally starts some sort of franchise, like form a franchise after that, and there was only one sequel. So it's like I was also wondering, like, how would you even continue this? Like, how are you going to find a reason for somebody to go back and rewatch all
Let's
these
do it
home
again, man.
movies without it just being another writer or
I
without
bet you it.
like going through the
Yeah,
same plot,
it's. I bet. I mean, without seeing it, I bet you it's almost beat for beat the same story. Like if I was a gambling man, they probably move into Ethan Hawke's house, find the films, do it again.
like his house that they move into at the end of
Well,
the
that's their
movie,
old
the big
house.
one.
Like
Oh
the
yeah,
yeah,
true,
the
yeah.
house. It's they're going back to his old house. It's either that or they try to explain Bagul way
Way
too
too
much
much.
because ghost movies do that a lot where they go like way too into it. I'm like I don't need to know all
or they
this. You
or
know?
maybe they start utilizing him more. Like he's
Yeah.
like is in the movie a lot more, having more like jump scares, or he's actually killing people or something. I could
Yeah,
see
because
them going that route.
he's not super. Again, at the end, he's got like a
He's
big
just
scene
kind of
in
the
it.
puppet master. He doesn't really
Yeah.
do much at all.
Yeah.
He's just kind of there to guide the children into what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Uh, and the daughter's savage at the end too. Like the way that she even says, like, "I'll make you famous again, Daddy," or
Give me
like,
phase again, Dad.
like
So she's got to be
Jesus,
a little conscious. She can't be like completely brainwashed. She knows what she's doing,
right?
like to make that remark.
Yeah. And I'm surprised he didn't go into her room and notice the Bagul drawing because like she draws the well first you gotta really support your kid if you want them just drawing all over their walls in their room.
Mm-mm, not a chance.
You must be really supportive if you're going to let your daughter draw all over the walls in the room. But then she goes and draws the missing girl from the house outside of her room, like in the hallway, and they get really mad at her. But then you find out like she has a whole drawing beside her bed of Bagul and everything when she's seeing the dead girl next
Yeah,
to her
like
and
the
everything.
tree and everything's in there and stuff. It says,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it says Boogeyman,
You
like
tell
it's
me one of
drawn.
the parents didn't go into her room at all and see this picture and be like,
Yeah, like
yeah, something's up. Something's wrong.
yeah, I don't like this. See, my kids should see a therapist. Even the son, like
The
he's
son's
having these
having night
crazy night
terrors.
terrors, like that he's outside and shit, and like they're just like, oh,
Those
it'll
are
pass,
more
it'll
than night
pass.
terrors.
Yeah, like this kid is not just having nightmares, dude. Like you need to put a lock on his door or
This kid
something.
is in
Like
a box, like folding himself backwards out of it and screaming like he's
yeah,
possessed or something. Like,
they just let it
nah,
go.
this dude needs to be in a hospital. He needs to
Yeah,
be under intensive care or something, looked
yeah.
after.
Figure it out. Like, does he need bed straps for his safety? Like, be good
That'll probably
parents.
be the
Stop thinking
first
about
route.
your book.
Put
Yeah,
a
get some
lock on the
bed straps.
door.
Lock on the door, you know, and maybe we don't have sharp things in your room, you know,
Yeah, because
like
he goes out and that's when he goes out after seeing Bagul and he finds him like half naked in the bushes, like just shivering, and it looks like his eyes are rolled back at his head and stuff too. It's like
yeah, because
this
he's just
kid
like
needs to be
sleeping.
under watch like constantly. Why are you letting him go out to school where they're just like telling him what's happened at his house and everything regarding the 4 people that got killed and such?
And why do you keep getting drunk every night instead of worrying about your kid? You know, like oh, they're happening. Let's not put any more extra care, like even a baby camera. You know, like something to watch this
They had
kid.
them in 2012, right?
They
Yeah, like
definitely had a baby camera in 2012 that they
exactly.
could have
Put one of
put up.
those in his room
Yeah, a
or
motion
something.
detector, something like that, you know.
Especially whenever, like, he starts waking up in the middle of the night and his office is open and the projector's on and everything, you would think you would have one of those be like, "Alright, who the fuck's going into my room at
Who
night?
is going in here? Yeah.
I'm gonna put a camera up here so I can see who it is."
Nah, it takes way too long. Again, like we said, this there isn't a lot of plot to this movie, you know, like it he watches movies, he gets to his old house, and then the end happens. Like so all this shit's filler, but like he waits way too long for some of this shit. So there's another negative.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he finds the scorpion in the attic, the snake in the attic, and then the dog, and apparently the all 3 of them are, like, I guess, parts of symbols, like,
Yeah.
associated with Bagul as well as, like, the not even it's not a pentagram, but the symbol you have behind you there that they find that
Yeah.
you see throughout the videos either on the walls or, like, it was, like, on the hood of the car. Because the one car, it's just, like, the family tied up, and then they just set the car on fire in the one
Yeah.
garage. It's pretty s crazy.
It's pretty gnarly actually.
Yeah,
Those
the
are some
kid.
cool scenes. Yeah, where you
Yeah, I
see
think
him
the
like
lawnmower is the one that sticks out the most because that has the most memorable jump scare to it. I think the darkest one, in my opinion, is either the pool one or the one where he's slitting the family's throats in the
yeah.
beds, just because they're like duct taped to the bed and everything, and they're awake. Like the family's awake and they're seeing this happen.
Yeah,
Uh,
most of them look drugged, like especially the car and stuff. Like they're definitely like sleeping in the car.
Yeah, and I was
Yeah.
surprised they didn't, like, put that in it. So, like, you have the daughter drugs Ethan Hawke at the very end, spoiler alert, because it has, like, the little green stuff at the bottom of his cup he sees, but you think they woulda had, like, some sort of, like, foreshadowing that there was, like, some kinda substance in the house like that? Because like, where the hell would this girl
Yeah,
get
where did she get this?
poison from?
From Brickle, this magic poison. He's like, here.
'Cause you foreshadowed that the daughter brings him his coffee every
Yeah.
so often in the movie, but you don't have, like, any insinuation that there's poison in the house somewhere. Like, where are
And
they
she
gonna
gave
get.
all everybody something to drink because, like, in the end, she's got
Yeah,
not just the dad, she's got the
the
son and the
mom and the son,
too tied
yeah,
up.
tied
So
up.
she got everybody. Because again, she's the youngest. She's like the smallest. Even the brother, I feel like, could overpower her. You know,
Yeah.
like, and I don't know if you know kids, but like my oldest is not taking anything my youngest makes him. If she would give him a drink out of just
He's like,
pure
"No."
kindness, he'd be like, what'd you do to this cup? Like, there's something wrong with this
And you
cup.
saw how they're fighting in the movie
Yeah,
too. At one point, they're, like, throwing food at each other, like,
yeah.
yeah, that you're right.
My
You
my
wouldn't trust her with anything.
no, I'm not drinking that. I'm getting my own drink. Like, get out of here.
I like the story overall though, just 'cause
Yeah,
it's a
we're
mystery
nitpicking.
he's solving. You actually have the little pieces that are kind of pieced together. I never really, like, because I watch it so few and far between, I never actually, like, try to notice if you see Bagul in those first couple times he watches the
I
films
think you
before
should.
he notices it. I never really noticed if he's actually present or if that's something they kind of insert, like, at the time when they want you to see it, you know?
That would be
Um,
my biggest, like, not gripe with the movie, but like how I think it could improve itself. I think it should be a lot more of just Bagul in the background, just walking by windows. He's there. Not, don't bring
yeah.
attention to it. Halloween's a great example of it, like where he's just there, you know, like if you're a good viewer and you're watching, you're like, ooh, there's Bagul, ooh, there's Bagul, you know.
Yeah.
And like as it like continues to like get further and further, he becomes more and more out of the movies. You know, maybe he's in the
Mhm.
mirror, in the bottom of a cup or whatever. You know, he drinks
Yeah.
enough. You couldn't one time put the glass down and you just see like kind of Bagul standing there, like in the reflection of the liquid.
Yeah.
So
That
I
would've
think that
worked
would
a little bit better than just having these little, like, jump scares slapped in there.
exactly.
I think it would've made it creepier, in fact, if you
I
would've
think
just
you could
had them
still
in there.
do the jump scares even just like, but it would have gave it just a more to for me personally.
More of an impact.
Yeah. And we were nitpicking and I'm with you. I like this movie too. And I prefaced it in the
Preface?
beginning. Like I don't really love ghost movies. This is when I like this movie, you know?
Yeah.
Like this is
I always thought it was a solid movie,
a
after
good
watching
ghost
it,
movie.
and that's why I like to watch it, like, so few because I think it's damn effective with what it's trying to do in it.
It's
Um,
scary.
and to go back to what you were saying about having Bagul, like, the one of the least, one of the most recent, movies I remember doing that was Longlegs. I know you haven't seen it yet,
Mhm.
but throughout the movie, there is, like, a shadow of like a demon that's available, and
Mhm.
it's like throughout the whole movie, and like it's hard to notice at certain times, but you definitely do notice it. But I guess it's in the movie. I don't know the exact number. They did release the exact number for people to kind of go back and try to count them. But I noticed
It's
it when
good
I was
horror making.
watching it. Like it helps with the atmosphere and like the kind of overall creepiness factor of the movie. It's like something lurking that's kind of pulling the strings in the background.
It helps with the rewatch of the movie too. It's
Yeah.
Fight Club's a great example, you know, like when you know, like,
Yeah.
hey, like he gets cut into some of these scenes, like when you first watch it, you don't notice it at all, and then you come back and you're like, oh shit, like that's good filmmaking, you know,
It
like you get to
is.
see that
Yeah.
stuff, you know.
I wish they would have done a little bit more with the like the creepy scenes where he's just like kind of walking around in the dark. And I also wanted to know how he's not waking everybody the fuck up in the middle of the night, falling through the ceiling, or just walking around the house by himself, bumping
Right.
into stuff and
Yeah,
yelling and stuff. Like nobody wakes up at all.
ever.
The heaviest
Such a son,
sleepers in this family.
such a son.
Well, yeah, his son's
Yeah,
already up. His son's
yeah,
already outside or in a box
going
somewhere.
to scare him somewhere.
Like Ethan Hawke did a really good job with this movie. I mean, I can't think of too many Ethan Hawke movies that I've seen, but I feel like the ones I have seen him in, he's a pretty decent actor.
Yeah,
He's a
he's in
damn good
Moon Knight
actor.
again. Marvel. He's
Oh
in
yeah,
Moon
he
Knight.
is in Moon. He's the bad
The
dude, bad
villain.
guy in Moon Knight. I totally forgot
Exactly.
about that.
Marvel connection. Marvel's just got all
Yeah,
of
there you
me.
go. Well, that's the Marvel machine is like we're gonna fit every big actor we can in all these movies if we can. We'll find some role for you.
Exactly. You can't have a conversation in Hollywood without bringing up Marvel.
They got Harrison Ford in the
Yeah,
new
they got.
Captain America movie that's coming out. Like they somehow wrangled him in there.
How the
Like
fuck did they get Harrison
when are
Ford?
they
That
gonna
guy.
get? I mean, De Niro was in the Joker, but that's close enough. That was a
Nah,
DC movie.
that was a
Uh,
DC movie.
when are you gonna get like Al Pacino or some of these other old vets in here?
Tommy Lee Jones.
Tommy Lee Jones.
Tommy-
Well, he was Two Face back in the day, so
yeah,
that
but
kind of counts.
it kind of counts.
Kind of counts. He was in a superhero movie.
I love him as
He
Two
he
Face
did
too.
his time. He did it
I
way
like
earlier. He had to deal
I
with Jim
like that movie.
Carrey.
Could you deal with Jim Carrey, man? I would love to have Jim Carrey.
Well, that was the story. Apparently, he hated Jim Carrey. I know
I've
this is a
heard it.
story for the Batman Forever review at some point, but yeah, I
I've
remember like the quote that Jim Carrey always says was like he saw him in a restaurant one time, and Tommy Lee Jones told him, "I cannot sanction your buffoonery." And I was like, "Geez, dude."
takes himself too serious. This dude's on like the Batman set and like one of the wackiest Batmans too.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, come on, get the fuck out of here.
But he's such a great actor
Oh,
at playing the straight man,
love him.
especially in Men in Black, playing
Men
off
in
of Will
Black.
Smith. It
Yeah.
fits him perfectly.
Man of the House. I know it's like a weird one, but like I
This
love
is
The
my happy
Fugitive.
face.
I love Man of the House. I love The Fugitive. Like I like those movies.
Yeah, classic. I don't
Classics.
care.
I
I
don't,
didn't shoot my wife. I don't
I
care.
don't care. I gotta watch that movie again. I haven't seen that in a while.
That's a good ass movie too.
Yeah.
I've only seen Man of the House once, but I remember it being kind of funny.
It's gotta. I mean, it's dumb. We're getting way sidetracked.
Yeah, we're
But
getting sidetracked. But I mean, Ethan Hawke is good in this movie. You don't really have too many other people that really stand out as far as the story, like as far
this
as
is his
acting
movie.
range goes in the
Yeah.
movie. Like his wife is probably the second one because she goes through it. Like most of the movie, she's just upset with him and
Yeah.
like not really caring for his kids or his family, or he's putting all of his time and effort into writing this next book and this mystery, like just kind of leaving them high and dry. Like the daughter's obviously going through some stuff. The son's going through night terrors, and
Yeah.
it seems like he can kind of care less about the situation. The wife's just kind of dealing with it on her own.
Yeah. You
And she
don't.
even tells him, like, I'll fucking leave. Like, if you're gonna
She
go
should have.
this far with it, I'm dipping. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And she should
I'm
have.
going to my sisters. Should have left her sisters.
Yeah. I mean, he even tells her at one point, like, you should go stay with your family. Like, doesn't he? He tells her like he
Yeah.
just stay
Go.
in like Colorado or something with
Yeah.
her
It's
dad or
Boston,
something.
but yeah. But yeah, I mean, this movie. I mean, this is the. I mean, he's basically the only character that gets any kind of development, any kind of depth, anything else. Everybody else is just a side character. This isn't like an
Yeah.
A B story. This is an A story. We follow story A the whole way through.
Yeah.
So
And you just kind of have little people he interacts with that kind of
yeah,
push his story a little. Like the sheriff doesn't really push his story along. He's just there at the beginning to tell him like, "Hey, I don't want you in my town." And then he's at the very end where he's like, "I'm glad you're leaving my town."
exactly. There isn't a single scene that Ethan Hawke isn't in and is
Oh
like
yeah.
the driving force of the scene. Like this movie's not about anybody else.
I think he does a great job with it, just
Yeah.
because he does portray a broad range of emotions throughout this whole thing. Like as far as like being excited to like be cracking this case, like there's this huge mystery on his hands that only he really knows about. Up to the family drama, and then him being frightened for his and his family's life. They got to get out of here, and then you have the fresh start. You think everything's all roses and everything's going to be good, and then
Nope.
the daughter happens. And that's
Yeah.
I was surprised they didn't show more of that too at the very end, because it cuts away very quickly when it's
Yeah.
about to like,
I think that's
she's
the
about to
old
kill them all.
adage. Your imagination like runs better than like what they could show you. And then
Yeah.
they have the scene with Bagul coming out of the projector, and he like gets the daughter and like brings her into the projector.
Yeah, because I guess Bagul also he's like eater of children, they say.
Yeah, but
Is the eater
like
of children. And my guess is he stole the souls of the other kids, but he hasn't like devoured their soul yet. That's why they kind of take off running whenever he
yeah,
shows up, is like
but
maybe
they're
they're kind of trapped in a limbo until he finds them type of thing.
yeah. I never know if they're helping them or her. Like the kids, I don't know if they're bad or good because like
It's
the daughter seems like she
yeah.
talks to the other girl, but you think she would warn her like, "Hey, you need to get the fuck out this house," you know? But like, I don't know.
Yeah.
They
My
don't really go into
assumption is that they're kind of good. Like I don't think they're directly working with Bagul. And I only say that because the other movie that this guy directed, with Ethan Hawke, actually, The Black Phone. I don't know if you saw
yeah.
that.
I did. I know what it is, but I did not know.
Yeah, The Black Phone also involves like ghosts in a way. Um, I don't know if you want me to kind of tell you like the
Doesn't
basic
matter.
premise.
You're good.
The kid gets kidnapped by Ethan Hawke. He's like a kidnapper. He's not like a pedo or anything, but he fucking like kidnaps him to kill him eventually. But as this kid is like trapped in this basement, he uses his like black phone that's in the basement to kind of talk to the spirits of the other kids that were killed there, and the kids kind of help that one kid out by like,
Okay.
this is what you need to look for. This is what I found out whenever I was there. Like you can open this one
Ooh.
grate by doing this and such. They're kind of giving him little hints that kind of help him get out in a way. So just because it's the same director and same writer and Ethan Hawke, I'm assuming that these kids aren't evil, because it seems like they run away from Bagul towards the end when he shows
Yeah.
up. So my guess is like they're kind of trapped in that little limbo world that he's in, kind of like Insidious. Has its own like little world where these ghosts lie that they end up
Yeah.
going into multiple times throughout those movies. It reminds me of that in a way, like a little purgatory, like dark area these souls go to, and that's where Bagul, I'm assuming, in between all this stuff, is him hunting these kids down that he's trapped to try to eat
Well,
their
for
souls.
years then, because like some of those murders were like 60 years ago. They
Hey,
said
they're good at hiding, man.
he's like a chase.
Upside
He's just
down
a
or some shit. Yeah,
Bagul's
like
just
Stranger
pissy.
Things.
Dude's just pissy. He's like, ah, fucking
So I'll
kids.
swallow your souls. I'll swallow your souls.
I'll just get a new one. Fuck it.
Yeah, that's why he goes after another family. He's like,
Yeah.
I can't find any of these damn kids I keep kidnapping and taking their souls. I have to go find me another one.
No, I mean, but the daughter goes with him willingly in the end, though. Like she takes his hand and like
Yeah, he
goes
like
with him.
picks her up and takes her straight into there. But then they like show up, like you see the new box at the very end, and then the
Yeah.
new tape, and the film is called painting the house is what it's called,
Yeah.
because the girl's painting the house. Which, man, she must have really went to town, because after she's finished with the axe, like there's blood all over the walls when she's
It's
walking
drawn
down
in
that
it. And
hallway.
it's high too. She must have got a ladder or
Got a step
something.
stool to go up there
Yeah.
and draw the Bagul symbols on the wall.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's that new box, and then you have like all the kids sitting there, like in the rows, and then that's when fucking Bagul
Yeah.
pops up or whatever.
Well, that
You have
shit's
that.
scary.
Apparently, Jason Blum's the one that came up with that final little jump scare, and it doesn't surprise me in the least, because all of Jason Blum's ideas are terrible when he incorporates them. That's why he's not the director of all or writer of any of these things.
Yeah.
He's just the producer of them.
Yeah. Just give me the money and go away.
We don't need to hear from you, Jason Blum. As far as Blumhouse is concerned, they've really taken a nosedive. It just seems like they're just putting out just mediocre, cheap movies, and it worked with them for a long time. Like they were able to make some good hits off of cheap
Yeah.
cheap budgets like Sinister, and amongst other, like even like Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills did well for them.
No. Actually, I like them too.
Ends is another story altogether. But it seems like after that Halloween trilogy, it really went downhill. I guess Megan was kind of a hit
Yeah.
for him. It was
Oh, I didn't know they
popular.
did Megan. They're doing
It
a
was, yeah,
second
it
one.
was popular, but then you have like that one recent one. I forget what it's called. It has like a teddy bear in it. That's like a demon inside of a teddy bear. I heard that's terrible.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Night Swim is god awful. I heard.
Yeah, I heard that was terrible too.
Yeah, it just seems like they were just Five Nights at Freddy's didn't do well at all. They're saying like it seems like they're just having this huge run of just mediocre trash at this point, and like it's not even like super entertaining trash. At this
A24 took their place. A24 is like, it's mine now.
Yeah, I mean, A20 Neon is doing
Mm.
really good stuff. They had Long Legs and that Cuckoo movie that came out this year. They
I
have
just
another one that
watched.
just came out recently, did really well.
I watched an A24 movie called Bodies, 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 and it was terrible. I mean,
It has Pete Davidson in it.
does I mean
I never saw it, but I've heard about it
it was purposely terrible.
because it's supposed
Like,
to be kind of funny, right?
yeah, it's kind of funny, like, but it was. I watched it. It was entertaining enough.
I've heard about it.
Eh,
Yeah, I mean, even A24, they don't have like a perfect track record by any
hit or
means.
miss. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
it's
all
hit or
these
miss.
studios
I
are
think
hit or miss.
more so now. I feel like the longer these studios are going on after huge hits like this, it's harder to replicate that sort of thing. Like
Yeah,
A24 had a long run of really good movies, and then it's kind of hit or miss after that at this point. But I feel like you're gonna have that at certain points though.
well,
With
this is good Blumhouse. This is peak Blumhouse.
Yeah, this is early Blumhouse.
Yeah,
But I think this movie it's set up a lot of horror movies going after it. Like I mentioned, you have the whole professor explaining, giving the the behind the
Expedition Dump. Yeah,
stuff, yeah, the exposition dump. But you also have a lot of the stuff like the atmosphere stuff that you have like within the movies. I feel like it set a precedent for horror movies after it to kind of not copy, but kind of pay homage to Sinister in a way. Like there's a lot of elements that from this movie that were kind of introduced through later ones.
yeah. We brushed on it a little bit. Like, this is definitely in the height of like the possession ghost film, and to me, this is one of the best ones. Like, so there's bound to be copier. There's even a movie, I don't know if it came out after this. It's called Boogeyman, and like
It came out before.
it's very
Well,
similar to this
there was
movie.
one that came out like a couple like 2 years ago now called Boogeyman. It wasn't
Really,
bad.
I
I don't know
remember
if it was
Boogeyman.
Blumhouse or not, but it was kind of meh.
I remember there's a couple Boogeymans. It's like one, two, and three Boogeymans, and somebody pretty famous is in that
Yeah,
too.
those were like early 2000, like mid 2000s, I think. The
Yeah,
original Boogeyman.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's
Some
like it's weird that they don't have like a huge franchise based off of that, like the
I think there's
Boogeyman.
like
Like
three of them. I think there's like two or three of them.
yeah, but I'm saying it because I think the first one was like in theaters, and then the other two are like directed to
Probably, yeah.
DVD or direct to video. But then you had the new one that came out in theaters like a year or so ago. But I feel like the Boogeyman is such a huge, like everybody knows who the Boogeyman is.
And
Like
he's got
kids,
to be. He's probably public. He's got to be public domain, right?
yeah. So
Like, you
it
can't
surprises
copyright
me
the
there's
Boogeyman.
not a lot more movies based that are centered around the Boogeyman.
Yeah,
Even though when I think of the Boogeyman, I think of Michael Myers. Like my first thought of Boogeyman is Michael Myers. He's
I
the
think
shape.
of Oogie Boogie.
Oogie Boogie.
I don't know
Some people
if
think of John Wick. He's Baba Yaga.
you
Yeah.
say Boogeyman, I think of like Oogie Boogie. I don't know why.
I'm the Oogie Boogie Man.
Boogeyman.
Yeah, man. I mean, Sinister, I think it is super effective. Like I
Yeah,
mentioned, I think a lot of these scares and a lot of the creepiness, it relies on those home movies. But I think there's a perfect amount of them. I think there's like 5 or 6 of them they show throughout the movie, and they keep going back to them every so often. But I think because they keep adding the layers and new stuff within them that you're kind of noticing, it does make it creepier. It does make you feel a little unsettled at certain times because you are watching. It feels like you're watching
uh,
real people getting killed
yeah.
on these movies, especially when there's like kids involved. It's a little uneasy feeling. Like I mentioned, I think it doesn't work as well outside of those movies. Like you do have a couple effective jump scares in there, but I feel like a couple other of them are a little forced and don't work as well. And it just feels like they're kind of shoved in there because they needed a scare every so often within a movie. You know how it is. Like they want to
Yeah.
scare every like 10 minutes or 15 minutes or something. I don't know. I think the characters really helps it out because you actually have a character that's not like one dimensional. You actually have him kind of grow throughout the movie, even though it is really just one character that kind of grows
Yeah.
and then he's just kind of interacting with everybody around him. I think it works perfectly because you have a trained actor such as Ethan Hawke that's able to do that sort of thing in there. But I think it's effective. And I feel like there's not really too many movies that have reached that type of being uncomfortable at certain points. Like there's a lot of movies that have effective atmosphere and creepiness, like A24. That's a huge staple of theirs is atmosphere within their movies. But I feel like as far as feeling like unsettled watching certain things, there's not a lot of them that top Sinister, in my opinion. And I don't think it's necessarily the scariest movie of all time. I'm not going to go as far as what Forbes is saying, but I definitely think it's up there as far as creepiness factor and overall scare factor.
Yeah. I mean, I would bounce off a lot of those ideas. Uh, I don't scare super easily. Like I watch horror movies recreationally all the time, and
Yeah.
this movie generally scares me. Like I'm not joking. When I was like this for a few of the things, like oh, like just knowing it was coming up. So it's got to stand a test for that. I know you said like you want things explained. I kind of like that they don't explain a lot. I think it's a pretty simple movie.
I was just kind of making like
Yeah,
jokey out
yeah,
of it. Like we don't, I don't think it would have worked at all if they tried to explain how the boxes got there and everything like
yeah.
that.
See
No,
people drop them down.
he's
Uh,
just climbing up the ladder into the attic and putting it in there.
oh shit. But yeah, I think it's a simple story, and I say that like as a positive. I like that it's an A story. You're following the same guy the whole time. I think that keeps it very personal almost because it's just one dude you're connected with.
Hmm.
Like this is like you want him to get out of it. Like I wanted him to survive. We kind of brushed on it. I love that it plays on the aspect of like just get the fuck out of there. But really, it's like no, you shouldn't have left. Like you really hurt that.
Hmm.
And honestly, I think Bagul is a pretty good creature design. I mean, I think he's a good. I think he looks. I mean, kind of slender manny ish because of the
He
suit
looks
and
like
stuff.
Jim Root from Slipknot, the
A
dude that
little
has
bit
the
with the
diamonds
face, yeah,
and the zipper on his mouth and stuff. He looks like
yeah.
Jim Root.
But I think he's got a genuinely creepy aesthetic. You know, not the best creature design I've ever seen or anything, but
I
you know,
think it looks good
memorable.
enough for the screen time that he has. Like, I feel like
Yes,
if he was utilized more, I don't think it would have been as effective.
yes. I mean, he looks like a man in in a mask, but I
Yeah.
think that's okay. You know, I do. I honestly think because this story's so simple is my best word, but again, I don't mean that in a negative way at all. Like, but like, it's a simple story and it works. It's effective. You said it too. Like, it's an effective story. This I know where it's the miss it, rent it, or buy it. Honestly, it's buy it for me. I actually think it's a pretty good film. This is something again I don't watch often, but it stuck with me. I knew it was scary. Even when I
Yeah.
rewatched it with my wife, I was like, "Ooh, this was a scary movie" when I watched it. So, I mean, if that's your thing, buy it.
Yeah, I think it's super effective in that aspect. It's super memorable because like whether it's the lawnmower like
Yeah.
film or just the films in general, it's a very memorable aspect of the movie. And yeah, out of like a buy it, rent it, or miss it, I would definitely say buy this one. Like if you're a horror fan, I definitely think this one should be in the collection at some point. And another note, I know touched on it earlier. I don't think this movie would have been nearly as good if there was other music in here. I don't know who
Oh
did the
yeah.
music for
Score.
the actual like home movies, but it is genuinely unsettling. Like some of the
Yeah.
sounds and stuff that in there. There's like some like forms of chanting in a couple of them, like oh, like there's some weird stuff that's kind of like mixed in the background. It's so super creepy, even down to like the music you have towards the end when they're like packing up and leaving. It sounds like the end of one of the film reels that ran out, and then like it's slapping
Just
on the
like
back of the
slapping.
projector.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like that, just like just keep being looped back and forth. And it's I don't know, it's very effective as far as sound design goes. And I don't think this movie would have worked nearly as much if there was like you know just some regular orchestral like horror movie music or something in there. It wouldn't have been nearly as effective.
Yeah. No, I agreed. I don't think sound gets the credit it deserves in horror sometimes, so I'm glad you said something.
But yeah, this is definitely buy it for me. Definitely, if you haven't seen Sinister by now, definitely go check it out. It's definitely one of the better horror movies that have come out within the past 15, 20 years.
Yeah, I think it's on Max. I think that's where I watched it. It's on
Yeah,
Max.
I
So
watched
like,
it on HBO Max. Next week, it's going to be the last review leading up to Halloween. So I think it is finally time, after years of running the channel here, we're going to talk about an absolute classic, my favorite, not just horror movie of all time, but one of my favorite movies of all time. And that is going to be Halloween from 1978, the original that started it all. Well, not
yeah,
started, because there were horror movies and slashers before that, but the one that really kicked it off as far as bringing horror to the mainstream and slashers and Michael
mainstream. Yeah,
Myers.
put it in the
Yeah.
spotlight.
But yeah, it's about time. I mean, I've had the channel for a while now, and I haven't talked about one of my favorite movies of all time. So we have to make it happen. And then you're going to be on here. We're going to talk about it as well, and that should be a great one. And I know
Yeah,
it's going to be hard to talk about Halloween because I feel like everything's already been said about it, but it's going to be an interesting conversation. But yeah, that is the show for this week. As always, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure to check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Cinema Trip Reviews. Go drop in and leave us a good review wherever you get your podcast. Helps us get the show out there to a lot more people. Also, drop in and check us out our store here. There's a lot of stuff at the link below. But yeah, until next week, we'll see everybody later.